This year's seminars begins with a presentation by one of the leading Native American and forensic artists in the United States. He has spent over 49 years in law enforcement, completing thousands of witness description drawings and hundreds of soft tissue reconstructions. He is a Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal member and is recognized as an accomplished master Native American artist. Here to present ledger art in the West, please welcome Harvey Phillip Pratt.
Wow, what an honor to be here. It's a pleasure. You know, growing up as a young boy in Anadarko and El Reno, Oklahoma, I never would have thought that I would be standing up here on this stage addressing you people. Like I said, I'm a Cheyenne and Arapaho Indian. I'm part Sioux. I'm one of the Southern Cheyenne chiefs. I've been a chief for about 20 years. Chiefs choose chiefs. They're not elected by the people. The chiefs go out and look for somebody. So I was very fortunate. I was applied for the Dog Soldier Society among the Cheyennes when the chiefs came and got me. And my Indian name when I was born is Vihunchkis, and it means he's going to be a chief. And the people named me that because I'm a veil baby. You know what veil babies are, you know? Had a membrane attached to my head down to my chest, and I was born in a house, not in a hospital. And my mother had all these old women around him, and when they saw me, oh, look at him, he wants to be a chief. So they gave me that name. And so I kept that all through my young adulthood and through Vietnam and in law enforcement. And right when they came and got me as a chief, I changed my name. I chose the name of Wopet Nonoma, which means White Thunder. And White Thunder was my great-great-grandfather, who was an arrow keeper. And he died at Wolf Creek, and his daughters married into the Bent family, the Bents who opened Santa Fe Trail and had Bent's Fort. So William Bent, Charles Bent, who was a territorial governor of New Mexico, was killed and scalped with a bowstring. So I have a grandfather who was French. His name was La Guerrier, and he blew himself up smoking a pipe, sitting on a wagon, and they had an open keg of black powder underneath the seat, and he cleaned his pipe out, and there he went. So I have a lot of heritage in my background, and a lot of people don't know where they come from. I've been very fortunate to have a culturally deep family that promoted the culture, and so it's been a very proud history for me. Silas Bent threw tea in the Boston Harbor dressed up as an Indian. See, so it just keeps going on. I'm just always amazed at my background, and so being a young Indian artist, and I did not quite know that I could be a painter or an artist until someone told me that. And Susie Peters, some of you know who Susie Peters was. She discovered the Kiowa 5. She was still alive when I was a young man, and she came and looked at some of my artwork and said, well, he has talent. And then I sold my first painting, and I said, uh-oh, the light bulb went off, and I said, I could do this. So I got being interested in the culture, I got interested in ledger art. And I did my first ledger art piece probably in the early 80s, and I used to do it in single pages, and then I as you come look up here, I've got ledger books up here for you to examine and look at some of the art that the Indians gathered, either by trade or by taking it. And, you know, historically, let me find my clicker here. That's what I did with it. Yeah, I laid it down over there. You see it, Eric? I've been over, maybe I dropped it someplace over there. They may have to just... There you go. Well, the next guy needs that thing. my wife's going to get after me. She said, I'm always leaving something somewhere. I left my phone this morning. Uh-oh. There it is. There it is. My wife's going to be, don't tell her. Don't tell her. Historically, Indians were pictorial. They left messages for each other and for designs, and go back thousands of years that they would carve on the rocks and draw pictures on the rocks of their exploits and their history. And so you see the rock art that you used to see, and it is scattered all over America. There's a piece out by Arcadia in a little cave, a little sandstone carved in a rock there. I went out and looked at it to see when they told me about it. So I went and inspected it, and I found some caves, and people have marked north and south and little symbols on them. And so it's historical, it's forest. And so the rock art was very important, where they translated. There's a big grizzly bear, it's been there on that rock for hundreds of years. And there is another drawing out of Utah, and it depicts the biped Bigfoot, is known as Bigfoot. Indians called him all sorts of things, and they drew a picture of him on these rocks in Utah. It goes back hundreds of years, so it has some history to this art. And as the Indians progressed, and as they got older, and they would leave messages on trees using pigments and charcoal and debarked trees, and they would tell stories on them, and people would find them. They would find battle sites where people fought and won, and then they would draw these on these trees and draw them on rocks. And when a young man wanted to wed a young woman, he would maybe he might draw a picture on a piece of wood or on a buffalo shoulder blade, and it would be pictures of to show to some woman's brother, and said, I want to meet your sister. In the Cheyenne culture, brothers give away sisters. Brothers allow you to marry somebody. And you know why that is? Because brothers run around with those guys, and they know who's a good guy and who's a jerk. So they get to pick. I don't want you to marry him. You marry him if he brings you a bunch of horses. So that's kind of the way it was, and I thought that's a pretty good idea. I wish that I've been able to do that for a couple of my sisters, because they married some guys that wasn't just very cool. So you see hide paintings. And hide paintings were really very popular. They depicted war scenes and hunting and the exploits of warriors. And these exploits of warriors, and they would put them on their robes and wear their robes. And when the war started, and the military started raiding the camps, a lot of those robes were burned up. So there's not a lot of them. And about 1840, at Bent's Fort, the Cheyennes were there, and they were watching a lieutenant draw a picture of Owl Woman in a ledger book, in a little ledger book. And so when they saw that, the light bulb went off, or something went off, smoke, fire. Anyway, they got the idea that ledger book is a lot better than that hide, carrying that hide around. And I can take that ledger book and draw in it and carry it, and if I have to run or go somewhere, I can put it in my bag or on my back, and I'll keep it, and I'll have it, and I'll have all of my art in there, all my awards and things that I've won as a warrior, and by exploitations. And so that once they saw those ledger books, they started collecting them, and they would either take them, or they would trade for them, or barter, or do whatever how they would get them. And they realized that the Europeans had pencils and colored pencils and ink and watercolors, and it was a lot easier to carry that stuff around than it was to carry a 30-pound or a 40-pound hide, and all the tools that they used, sharp sticks and brushes to mark and all the paints that they used, when with a pencil and a colored pencil, they could carry it in their hand rather than all that other stuff. So, recognizing the ability to adapt, they started doing the ledger art. Today, I'm going to show you some ledger art that covers the Cheyenne and Arapahos, the Kiowas, and the Lakotas. And some of the art that I have, to my knowledge, has never been published. Some of the artwork coming out of the Lakotas, out of Nebraska. I have some drawings here that were found in the late 1880s under a tree in a ledger book. And it's called the Tie Creek Art. And the family kept it for 50, 60 years, and then they turned it over to the Nebraska University for safekeeping and to be examined and studied. And an anthropologist there contacted me and asked me to look at all of the art and to give my interpretation of some of the things that they had. So I felt very fortunate. They sent me colored copies of everything, and some of that is what I'm going to show you today. It's very interesting. The things that the tribes would use to depict certain other tribes, and the power of the buffalo and the power of the horse, and certain things were exaggerated. If they had a fast horse, maybe they made their legs a little bit longer, and if they had certain medicine, they made it a little bit bigger. And if to identify themselves in a drawing, if his name was Big Bear, he would draw a line from his head to up here, and he would draw a big bear, or a big eagle, or whatever the name might be, that would tell who that person was. And then you could tell the difference between the tribes, and the bullets that were flying through the air, to me, looked like tadpoles. And you'll see them in your ledger art. They're just everywhere, and they're actually bullets. And counting coup, I asked one time, I asked my grandfather, I said, what's the deal with counting coup on somebody, you know? And he said, I said, just to touch him. And he said, well, he said, you need to be careful when you get close to a man that thinks he's going to die or is fighting for his life. That's a dangerous man. And you think about that, to touch somebody, ride by and touch him, to get close enough to him that you're not trying to kill him, but you don't know what he's going to do. So counting coup was a big honor, and you'll see a lot of this, that they'll do this in some of these drawings. So you'll see the depiction of things that are historical, things that are spiritual, and how they draw spiritual things and depict spiritual may be a wavy line coming off of the head. And I've got a drawing here out of the Tie Creek, and it shows some men with all kinds of lines coming off of their heads, and they're in a boat, and this boat is up in the sky. It's up in the sky, and I thought, where did that come from? Where did they think about flying around in a boat? And I'll show you that, and the things about animals that they have, and the spirituality and the power of animals, even the fish that they believed in that had special powers. Everything had some kind of power. So you'll see this shield here. You know, it has the deer tracks, the buffalo tracks, and the buffalo and the horns and the sun. All those things. That the sun is a power. And so you see those feathers and that red vermilion is so important in the culture. A lot of times that vermilion, they painted their bodies totally red. So you see the red on that shield. They would bury when they buried somebody, they might paint them red with vermilion to protect them. I reconstructed a Cheyenne Indian that he called him Sandman, and he was killed in 1838, where my great-great-grandfather was killed at the Battle of Wolf Creek. And he had vermilion on him. We could find it on his bones, and we found the conchos and so the red was very important. We found his little medicine bag for the Oklahoma History Center, and we reinterred him a few years ago. So you see the war party on a hide, and that was so prevalent until the Southern Cheyennes and the Arapahos and the Kiowas started learning that it was a lot easier to wear white men's clothes, cotton, and a lot easier than wearing a big heavy shirt and leggings. And so they see that transition even from their type of clothing that they used, and not only their weapons, the clothing, and then the ledger art books. And if you get a chance, I've got some up here for you to look at. Some date back to 1860. I got some checks there from 1976 that were written in a check, and then there's some loans there that were written in the 70s where they promised to pay, and just different. There's some pressed leaves in there that have been in there over 100 years, 140 years. Pressed leaves in this book. So if you find some, call me. If you find some ledger books, call me. So you just see the different types of designs that they did on hides, and they painted on these hides calendars, events, and you start to see some of the style of the art that they had. They painted the whole villages and sweat lodges and different ceremonies. So just to give you an idea of the abstraction of the art and what things mean, you find it so interesting what they drew and what did it mean. A lot of people didn't know how to interpret those little drawings. And people, when they talk about a woman and a wife, if I did this and I did this, it means this is my wife. This means she sits right here by me. When they do this, it means she sits right here. So that means your wife. Woman, wife, brother, just like this. It's the same. Brothers. They do that when they do sign language. So you see these things. I thought this was really an interesting piece. It really has to do with a ceremony of buffalo. You see horses have horns on them. The one's got a big mask. Those drawings are kind of a prelude to maybe going to war or to battle, but it's their ceremony. So they paint those horses like that and give them a buffalo look with horns and a mask. This is a battle. I think this is during Captain's period, and this is a fight between the Cheyenne and I think he's a Crow. Anyway, you see the big battle. You see that blood flowing down. That's a wound. Somebody got wounded, and the wounds that depict they'll show a wound from the hand or a wound from the mouth of a human being or from an animal that's been wounded. So they'll show them spitting up blood. And they watched the military, and they watched them drill and do ceremonies, and Native American Plains people were excellent horsemen, and they copied these guys. They copied the military, how they drilled and how they rode, and when they even got bugles, and when the military would blow one type of sound, the Indians would blow an opposite sound. And it was confusing. They learned all the different sounds that the bugles made, and so it was confusing to the military. They would blow something, they'd blow charge, and the Indians would blow retreat or something. And it was pretty interesting the way they did that they learned how to adapt with just the bugle and the ceremonies and riding in unison. And you see all of these horse tracks. That means lots of them. There's just lots of them. So you see the spraying, and then if you look closely, you'll see bullets here, bullets flying through the air here. You see this guy's been wounded. This guy's wounded. He's been lanced in the back, and they have beards. This is a sign for a white man to do this. And I used to think that was white eyes, because they say always white eyes. So they say white eyes, but it means flat-brimmed hat. See, when they first saw the Europeans come this way, they all wore hats and they were flat-brimmed. So they said, this is a flat-brimmed hat. And so that means he was a white man. So if they did this, he's a white man. And if he was an Indian, they did this. Rubbed the back of their hand for the color. And if he's a Cheyenne, they did this. Tapped their finger like that, meaning, I used to think it meant striped arrows, but it also means that they cut themselves. They cut their bodies when they were in mourning, so that they were striping and cut. So that's Cheyenne. Sioux's, you know, a lot of the Nez Perce, they grabbed their nose like that because the Nez Perce pierced their nose. Arapahos were this way or this way. You know, so it's just the way they communicated in those days. There's over 700 different dialects between the Indians, and they had to communicate some way, so they used sign language. And I found it interesting talking about sign language that growing up, being from several different tribes, it was confusing to hear Arapahos and Cheyenne, so we were all had 4 brothers, and they said, don't say that, that's Arapaho, these are Cheyennes, you need to say that. And so we were always confused all the time. So we got to listening to some guys, and you think about it, you learned your tribal language, and then you learned the language of your allies, and then you learned some things from some of the other tribes, but the way you communicated with them was with not speak, but by sign language, by making signs. And so they communicated that way, and that kind of merged into the ledger art. You look for certain things in there so that you could communicate with other people. And then when I was a little boy, I listened to two men talking. One was a Comanche and one was a Cheyenne. And they didn't speak English, they didn't speak Cheyenne or Comanche. They spoke Mexican. Mexican was the language that they all used in the south part of the country, in the southern part of the country. That was a universal language. They all learned it. There's words in among the Cheyennes that I thought were Indian, and they were Mexican words. I grew up thinking they were Indian words, but they were not. They were Mexican words. So Mexican was the way that people communicated. So you see the transition from sign to their tribal language to Sausage, and then to sign language, and then it turned into Mexican. Now it's English. But there was a transition, and I wonder, why are those guys talking Mexican? You know, why aren't they talking Cheyenne or Comanche or English? But that's the way they communicated between the tribes. It was interesting. So you see these guys here, they're in battle, the Indians are fighting them, and you'll be able to look at the different types of tribes. You see, they've done a whole village here with their teepees. And they have one standout teepee called the Lone Lodge. We still have that in Cheyenne. It's a Lone Lodge. It's where we go and do ceremonies when we Sundance. And different societies come in there, and they go in there, and they have a certain period of time to do their ceremonies, to induct new people. Cheyennes still have 4 war societies. And they have 5 societies. They have a chief society. So there's 5 different societies among men, and then we have women's societies. Cheyennes believe that women's prayers are stronger than men's, so we ask women to pray for us. I said, why do you do that? They said, because men go to war. Men go to war and they do terrible things, and we do that. We do terrible things in war, and women. So we have women that pray for us. And I think that's really important that you can do that. You can believe that way. So you see this Lone Lodge there in this camp, and this horse herd. You see that these horses are all wounded. They've all been shot. All their horses have been shot. You see a battle here between these 2 different tribes. See, this guy's been, look at the bullet holes in him, he's been wounded, and these are probably Osages. The Fort Marion Indians, there were 72 of them that were sent down there from this area, from this part of the country. A lot of them didn't do ledger art. Only the younger men did the ledger art. The older men from 35 on did not do very much ledger art. They had most of the history. They had most of the ledger books that they had were already done. They had already completed their honors, their fights, their glory. And the younger guys were still trying to do that. So they were still competing and trying to do that. So ledger art was starting to really hit its peak about that time. in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, and then they start getting into the reservation time where there was no more wars, no more things to do. They were defeated. You started to see the ledger art drop off a little bit. Started dropping off, and then the next generation come along would draw things that they heard about. And that's what we draw about now, things that we heard about. I have a teepee liner up here that is mine. When I served in Vietnam, I drew things that I did in Vietnam on that ledger. So I didn't have to do something, to repeat something that someone else told me about. Even though I do that now on ledger art, I hear stories and I interpret them, and I'll make drawings in ledger books. But you started to see that loss of these warriors during that time. Started dropping off, and you could see a little change in the style. The style of their art when they first started, Mixed Medicine had a certain style. It's a little kind of crude. You can see transparency. You can see that both legs on both from one side, and they did everything on profiles. And eventually they learned, they didn't know the difference how to make somebody far away and somebody close. So they just put something on top and somebody behind, and that would mean that they were way back. But now, as the transition changed, you could see the perception of depth in their drawings, and they started turning people towards you and seeing the full face instead of a profile. Early on, they were pretty simple because they were used to drawing with sharp sticks and brushed and chewed on brushes and with paints, and the material wasn't very good. So they were fairly crude and fairly simple, but they started to refine, they got better in their art. And so you can start to see that they're a little better here in their art. You can tell different warriors, and sometimes you'll see the same guy repeating over and over. Here, you'll see that these guys are all dead, and they're soldiers. They're soldiers because they had facial hair. They had facial hair. So you can see where they all been shot up, and you see where there was a lot of atrocities done, and you see this ledger art, and I'll talk about. Indians believe that when you die, you're going to go somewhere, and you might meet this person again, and he could be your enemy. So if you meet him again, you don't want him to be whole. You don't want him to have all his arms and legs and eyes and ears. So that's why they would cut a foot off, or they would cut a hand off of their opponent. Because in the afterlife, they said, we'd like to get into it again, so he needs to be without one hand, or he needs to be without a leg or something. See, so you can, if you have trouble with him again, you can defeat him. So that's what you see these guys, they've dismembered him to a certain degree. And that was done primarily in almost all the tribes. They did those kind of things to their victims so that they would not be whole in the afterlife. You can see that they started to get pretty refined. They're getting a lot better. You see how much color is in their drawings, and have a little trouble with making circles. And you see puts him way up in the air, and you see brush arbors and trees and people wrapped up in blankets, and you'll even see some guys with hats on, parasols here, and here. TPC. They have a little trouble in distinguishing between distances and heights and perspective, but if you know what you're looking at, some of the old scouts in the old days were able to read these signs when the Indians left them, like, we're going to move on to a camp along Hanging Woman Creek, and they would leave a little sign, and the Indians could read that, and the scouts started learning how to read those very same signs, and so they knew where the Indians were going. Because they would leave a message to somebody. See, this is the Sundance. See, these are the pledgers, these are the dancers. They got a eagle bone whistle in their mouth. This guy is tied to the thunder nest. This is a Kiowa Sundance. Kiowas don't do their Sundance anymore. They gave it up. They tried to renew it, and the tribe said no. You're not going to do that anymore. We gave it up. Cheyenne and Arapaho Sioux still do Sundances. So this is a Sundance, and that's called a thunder nest, and you see he's tied to it, and they've got eagle bone whistles, and their sacred paintings on their body. Another battle, I think these are the Navajos. They're fighting the Navajos. This guy's got all these ribbons, and he's got his. Sometimes their breechcloth they would have to tie them up because it would get in the way, so they would be free to move around, and they would tie their headdresses and their trailers around so they wouldn't be flying around. And so you see the big battle here between these guys, and arrows flying towards them, and bullets flying towards each other's big fight. These guys are fighting behind a barricade before they're down on the ground like that. They've barricaded themselves behind a breastplate. And they used to find a lot of those in the country where there was big battles and fights where they would build up rocks and fight behind them when they were getting overwhelmed. And sometimes you can still find those places. This is Cheyenne and Cowboy. They had very similar dress because they swapped back and forth. If I saw somebody that I was fighting and he was dressed manly, handsome, and I would copy that. Or if I could kill him, I would take it. And I would have his trophy, and if there was a big battle and someone was just really being victorious and wounding a lot of people and everywhere, then they admired him. They admired him if they saw someone from another tribe that was a great warrior, they admired him, and they might even take his name. So you see this battle here. They tied up his horse's tail. They tied his tail up, meaning they tied their horse's tail up. They are going to war. So this is Comanche and a Kiowa. They eventually became allies, but they tied up. They were pretty guys. They had Mexican headgear on their horses. Sabers. They loved taking sabers in battle. He's wounded. He's got a rifle here, and it's Mexican headstall on his horses. They like those. These are all old-time drawings. They like their painted horses. Pretty got his makeup on. You got a woman riding behind him with her parasol, riding back behind him. You can see the lines of the horses through here. In some places you'll see his legs on the other side of the horse. So if you're talking about being on horseback, the sign for horses was like this. If I said he had to put you on him, it means that you're riding a horse. Conchos, see these conchos here hanging down from here, tied in his hair. See, they're fighting from behind a breastwork, and these little X's here is what they use to brace them old heavy guns. They'd make an X and hold on to it, lay the barrel across it, so they wouldn't have to stand there and hold that big old steel barrel out and give them a little better time, a little better shot. So you see them shooting this man off his horse. These are the bullets. I call them tadpoles, but they're actually shows the direction of the bullet. Pawnees. Pawnees are called the wolf people. This is a sign for Pawnees, side of your head, just like that. Wolf. So you can see him firing on his head. He shot his horse, and they're having to retreat. The horses are all shot up. Interesting thing about horses, and I'll show you some here in a minute when we get to it. Utes, fighting the Utes. That's a dog soldier war bonnet. It's a dog soldier war bonnet. So you know that that's a dog soldier. He's got a long sash. See that sash? It's ones where they would stake themselves down. They would stake themselves down. They couldn't retreat. They would have to die there. The only way they could retreat is if their brother or their headsman came up to them and whipped him with a quirt and jerked that pin out of the ground, then made him retreat. Otherwise, he would have to stay there and die. And so you see that in that dog soldier bonnet and that sash that he wears around his waist. See, these guys all got their weapons pointed down. Well, a couple of them don't quite, do they? But that kind of means that if your weapons are down, that it's peaceful. We're not intent on anything. So maybe they're not quite as peaceful as they look. But they got their breechcloth is all tied up here, and he's got the buffalo horns on. You see these paintings, slash marks on his arm. When I said this is how you tell a Cheyenne, they cut themselves like that, and so that would be an indication of that. And you see these. Oops. Let me go back one. See the headgear that they wore here, these beaver hats, and he's got a peace medal on. Got a peace medal on. These women dancing, these singers here by the camp, and these women are dancing. She's got a peace medal on. See, these two here, they're being followed by their parents. They're letting them talk, letting this young couple talk, but they're right there with them. They just call it, put them under the blanket and let them walk together, and they can talk. And a lot of times they'd pull that blanket over their head and they'd whisper to one another. But they couldn't do anything crazy, couldn't do anything silly, because they'd be in trouble. They'd be in trouble. I think that's. You see that it looks like he tried to draw something, changed his mind, and drew him a little bit different. See how they marked the female's face and how he marked his face? We still paint our people like that. When we pass, we paint them with those special markings on red vermilion on their face when we put them in the ground, send them across the river. These are different Kiowa lodges that a lot of those old painted teepees were gone because of the wars and the burning up the lodges and chased them all over. See, what this is, they're leery of you. Whoever you are coming towards them, they're watching, but they're not coming out to be in open. They're not quite sure what you're going to do. See, this is an interesting piece here. See this man here? This is a cow. This is a cow. That's a buffalo. This is a teepee. That's a house. And he's standing here in the middle, and he's trying to decide which way am I going to go? Am I going to be like a white man, or am I going to stay as my family with my tradition? And he's at that crossing point. So that's what that depicts. They call that word up there, woha, for cow. And the Indians took it up because when the pioneers would come, they had oxen, and they would jiha and woha, and that's what they thought, well, that's what they call those cows. So they called them woha. So I thought that's it. But I'd like to see both of these animals are trying to influence him. See, he's blowing on him and he's blowing on him, trying to influence him and to come their way. See, this guy's finally turned his horse a little bit towards you. See, see the rear end of the horse, and then he turned him towards you. That's buffalo meat. He's a Cheyenne medicine man. He allegedly could talk to babies. Babies could tell him what was going on. If you didn't keep babies warm, or they got cold at night, or they were hungry, they would tell him. It's a long story. I can't get into it right now. Not enough time. So you see a fight here. He's fighting a soldier. You see here they show the hoof prints of the horse, of the iron hoof prints on this horse. This guy's painted himself. So it's either how big the legs are, and he's riding a stallion, and because it's a very fast, powerful horse. So he kind of depicts him that way. Same with this guy. I've seen him several times. He's got a small head on his horse. He's got a bow in his arms. And you see these guys over here getting ready to shoot at him. So he's charging them. Bears. They got bears and turkeys, mountain lions, deer, goats. So we have all the different animals that they utilize. And to get into some spiritualism actually what you're seeing here are fish, eagles coming to this man, and these are buffaloes at the 4 cardinal points on the shield and see him as a medicine person here. That's how he's probably supposed to paint his body when he goes somewhere or do something special or goes to war. He'll paint his body like that. He's getting the power from all of those different animals. These are all from Ty Creek. So you see that this guy, you saw him painted previously in the other ones. There's the sun, there's the moon behind him. These are mules. See how long the ears on this mule here? And this horse has got that buffalo horns on his horse, and he's got a crow on him here, and he's got an eagle there. And these all came out of that Ty Creek ledger book. And so it's painted in the 70s, you know, so that it's not as sharp and clear as the other, but you show here, somebody's dropped a gun, he's got an arrow stick, got 2 arrows stuck in him, and he's riding a big, powerful horse, and you see they're unshod horses. So this, you can tell that these are really early on pieces of ledger because they're not as detailed as they are in the late 70s and 80s. This guy appears to be wounded. He appears to have a wound on him. See, now here you see a guy with, he's got mules. He's stealing mules, running mules off. You see this horse here? This horse? It's got split ears. The ears are split. That is indicative of a special horse. That is a special horse. Maybe he's a good buffalo horse, or he's a good war horse. So he could find him easily in a herd, or if he didn't keep him right by his teepee. But if he put him in the herd and put him out, when he went to look for him, he could spot his horse a lot easier. They also painted the ears red, the horse's ears red, to help find him. There's this one I was telling you about, that these guys in a boat. See, there's the moon, earth. All this reflects spirituality's power. Where do they get this idea of being in a boat? I think that is pretty unique, pretty interesting. See how they painted their faces, these 2 guys? The painter's got a moon up there. He's got power coming out of his mouth. He's doing something. This guy's painted almost like that Bigfoot painting, but other than it's some kind of spiritual experience. Once again, he's taken mules and horses. No, mules were very important. My great-great-grandfather said he always rode a mule. He'd always keep a mule because they were so important. He said they were better than horses. He said horses would get killed or die, and a mule would just keep on going. So you see that once again, the spirituality of birds and different types of animals and eagles and all of this bird man here. Look at there, it's a man, and he's an eagle man. We have ceremonies in the Cheyennes they call it eagle. They're eagle men. And there's a certain society within a society that have that power. So you see these things in the water, fish, carp. That's a kingfish. Yeah, kingfish. And he's diving into the water. See him getting ready, diving in. It's just like he's going to catch something, but they depicted a rifle there. He's going to kill it. See a fight between the Indians. His name is a red bear. So he's got a bear above his horse there. There's a big eagle. So it's in hand-to-hand combat. See, this could, the cultural, religious pipes were very ceremonial, and this could be becoming a Christian. You see that it's got facial hair, and he's got almost a cross on him. Fight between an Indian and a white man. Bigfoot. This was drawn in 1870s, where by a Kiowa. And I said, "What's the trees on him?" He said, "Oh, that Bigfoot came from the mountains with us, and that's how from the mountain people." And he's captured. He's carrying an Indian man around. This is drawn in 1876. And it shows him escaping, getting away. So you see these coyotes all dressed up, dandies. This is this man is a homosexual. Cheyenne said homosexual men were very important in our society, very special people. They lived in both worlds, so they're very important. And they were matchmakers, and they were allowed to talk to women, where a man couldn't go over and just talk to a woman, but he could go talk to them and advise them on life and who to pick and being a woman. And he was the only one that was allowed to go to him. So there he is, this man, and he's got these women that he's visiting with. Normal Indian guy couldn't do that in those days. So you see, they're drilling because they watched the military. This makes medicine. So you see, they got better, and then we transitioned into the style started to change. That's a mopoke, and you just see the style starts to change and it evolved. And Lord mercy, I had 2 seconds left. Well, thank you. I hope you enjoy yourself, and I hope the Creator sends someone to walk with you today. Bless you.